We have today what I think is one of the funnest grand conversations to talk about, and that is moving out and independence. I have always been a very independent creature, so I was so excited when it was time to move out and have my own apartment and do all those grown up things. And I know that varies a little bit with each child, but it can be just such an exciting time of life for our grands. So let's talk today about how we have some of those conversations and how we can maybe help them, as they prepare to do that so that they have a successful launch. If you haven't watched it, watch the movie someday, Failure to Launch. It's kind of funny and a good relatable story to tell, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. So, why is this conversation important? Well, bottom line is developing independence and becoming very responsible in life is important. Okay. Look around you in the world today. There's probably quite a few folks you see that are not responsible for themselves. And look at the difficulties that creates in families or communities or our culture as a whole. We have a role to play in jumping in and kind of bringing that back into vogue. Leaving home is a natural progression. Of course, we want to be close with our children as they grow into adults and our grandchildren, but it is natural for them to leave home and go and create their own lives. They'll have education, they'll have career, they'll have love and marriage and family. That's the natural progression and has been, for generation after generation and hundreds and thousands of years. Okay. So we can't make it an oddity. It is something that should come to a young person with expectation, not with fear. Of course, there's some trepidation about it and how they'll do it, and that's where we can help. We can teach them how to do things, how to do budgets, etc. We'll talk about that in a minute. So, yes, they may be a little nervous, but let's encourage them, have the conversation, encourage them, and talk about some of the great things about being independent. So, how do we start this conversation? If they're at high school or college graduation level, just start by asking their plans. Are they going through college? Are they going to a trade school? Are they taking some time off and working? Just what are their plans as they enter into those adult years? And then what are their living arrangements? Have they thought about it? Are they going to live at home for a year or two while they're in maybe a local community college? Have they thought about those things? Have they talked about them with their parents? Jump into the conversation and enjoy their excitement, especially if they are excited. If they're nervous, then comfort them. But if they're excited, join in. Don't be a party pooper. Don't, naysay all their plans. Help them make their plans realistic, but enjoy the excitement and the adventure that comes at that time of life. If they haven't been thinking about these things, then ask some questions that get them thinking about it. Have you considered an apartment? Are you moving in with friends? Just ask some general questions and then ask if you can help in any way. Do they need some household items? Depending on your personal financial situation, can you take them shopping for some household items? Do you have things at home that you're not using that you could give them? I know one of my visits with my grandmother in that time during my life, she gave me some kitchen items, and I had the pan she gave me for years, that I cooked and made macaroni and cheese in, or ramen noodles, especially. Remember those years? I had that pan for a long time, and it's just kind of a cool memory. The day she gave me a few of her items to help me get started in my new household. So maybe you can do that. Ask your grandchild, if they need some things and if you can help. Then talk about maybe some of the things that they need to be thinking about that they wouldn't necessarily until they have a household to take care of. So here's a quick list of topics. Costs and lifestyle. Oh boy. Life is getting more expensive by the day right now. So it's easy to say, oh, I'm going to go get my own apartment and live on my own. But have they really checked into what apartments cost, location, size, all of that really affects the cost of living on a month-to-month basis. Help them do a little research and consider what kind of lifestyle they want. Do they want to be on their own? Do they have a special friend or two that they'd want to have as roommates? How can they share the costs? Can they find a place that is set up in a way that works well? Numbers of bedrooms, numbers of bathrooms, all that stuff. Just help them get the gears turning. Safety. This is important, and it usually isn't the first thought as a young person, where it's going to be safe to live. But I know as parents and grandparents, that's one of the first places our thoughts go, is we want them to be safe and in good neighborhoods and not in positions to be injured or hurt. So then responsibility, like leases and legally binding contracts. Okay, I am an attorney, and it boggles my mind the lack of understanding in our current culture about the reality of a legal contract. If you're over 18 and you sign a contract to buy something or to lease an apartment, you are responsible for a lot of dollars. And young people need to know that. If they sign a lease with friends and those friends leave and quit paying rent, they may be the last one responsible, and all of that financial responsibility falls on their shoulders. Help them to understand that and to know you don't just walk away from those things. You may get sued. You may have it affect your credit rating. Explain to them what a credit rating is and how it will affect their future if they make certain mistakes at young ages. So teach them about responsibilities like that too, and talk to them about that in this process. And then, like I mentioned above, gathering the needed items. It's kind of startling when you first move into, an apartment. It's like, oh, I need silverware, or I need a plate to have dinner on, or I need a towel. All those basics that we take for granted in everyday life when we're living at our parents' home. Suddenly we have to provide those ourselves. And so there's a shopping trip that needs to happen. And maybe they'll do some secondhand store shopping, garage sailing, things like that. And then what's the budget for new items if they need some new items? Talk to them about the pleasures and rewards of being independent. And this relates back to that fear issue. We can overwhelm a young person with all the talk of things like finances and leases and whatnot, to the point where we sound discouraging. We don't want to do that. We want to embrace the adventure of this time in their life, but just temper it with some of the realities of life and help them find that balance and make wise and responsible decisions. One of the things that I see in the current vernacular is the word adulting, and conversations about, with young people about how they're adulting now, or I see social media posts about that. So be aware of that. It's kind of fun. It's become a little verb unto itself. Not only am I an adult, but now I'm adulting. And so I'm out there doing adult things. So have some fun with it, and don't lose the joy of the process for the young person. Then help them also to understand that these struggles bring wisdom. Over the course of a lifetime, you and I know it, when we've lived enough decades to be a grandparent, struggles come. You'll have easy years, you'll have difficult years. You'll have seasons of, just peace and ease, and then you'll have a season where you just struggle almost daily for a while. We know they pass. The seasons change, just like the weather. The seasons of our life change also. Prepare your young person that you love for that. Let them know there's no shame in the struggle. It's natural, and it's actually good for each of us to struggle a little bit and to learn how to do the things that come with adulting. So what if they're not responsive about this conversation? What if they're not really open to it? That's okay. We've tried in this series to encourage you to drop the questions and comments out there and leave yourself open. And that goes back to talking about being open and honest with grandchildren. Open up the door, leave the opportunity. Maybe provide a worksheet, that you create based on what you think is most important. Here's some things to think about. I put together a budget sheet for you. Here's how you can consider the cost of moving out of your parents' home. Here's some of the things you might not be thinking about. Just give it to them. Don't make comments about what you think they should or should not spend their money on yet. Just give them a worksheet and let them start discovering on their own what it's going to take to be independent. Open that door, let them fill it out, think about it, and maybe they'll come to you and talk about it later. Activities that you might do with regards to this conversation, if they are open, work on that worksheet together. Help them understand what's realistic and what's not. I literally remember at times during one of my jobs when they paid monthly. Okay, it was not every week, it was not every 2 weeks, it was once a month. And when that first started happening, by the end of the month, I'd be digging for quarters in my change drawer and, trying to make sure I had enough to get through that last couple of days. So work through the worksheet with them. Talk to them about, making the money stretch through the entire month. Things like that, they'll learn one way or another, but at least if they're thinking ahead, they might hesitate a little bit before they spend money and literally don't have gas or milk money at the end of the month. Talk about rents and mortgages. It is really high, that cost of living right now. So maybe help them look, maybe go with them to look at a few apartments and just see what they get for their money, what's included, what's not. Do they have utilities? Talk to them about having utilities hooked up. It's something most young people don't think about until all of a sudden there's no lights or no water or no electricity. Somebody has to A, hook up those services to a place to live, and then B, pay for them regularly. What about repairs? If you're building a worksheet, most of the time, especially if they live in a home as opposed to an apartment, they'll be responsible for some of those repairs. And how do they do it? How much do things cost? What about lawn maintenance? Will they do that, or will they pay for somebody to do that? Commuting expenses. It's easy to think about, well, the cheaper side of town has all these apartments, but then you spend an hour commuting or more and you're buying gas and you are taking time out of your day. So help them balance out, the time versus the money and the value of what they're doing and the decisions they're making. There's just so much fun stuff to talk about when you talk about being independent and living on your own for the first time. Enjoy this conversation with your grands. If they're ready to have it and they're willing to talk to you, this can be a really exciting, fun time, I think, in their lives and in yours as you watch them. Take care and be grand.